in my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, not likely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running right, see. And I ain't playing games, I create my own lane, making pleasure out of pain, turning losses into gains, I'm the boss, I'm making change. I've been rocking this exchange, popping off and risking things, gonna make a name. I just wanna be famous, but I don't want that cheap fame. No, I'm not that vain, I just wanna be greatness.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So, we are here again today with Ray Carroll. Ray is... well, you've got it on there, so I don't need to put it up there. Ray is from the channel Sober Without God, and there's links in the description for that. Ray just recently started his channel, only has a couple videos, but go over and subscribe and come right back while we're waiting on some people to get here, and we'll still be here. How you doing today, Ray?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Which is contrary to the whole conversation before the stream started, but I'm actually doing okay. Things are good. You emailed me here a while back, and had told me a little bit of your story and stuff, and then later told me, said, hey, I'm gonna make a channel and put some videos on it and stuff, and you said that part of that came from watching my channel and stuff, and I think that's awesome. That's kind of the goal around here is to show people that you don't have to be a Bible scholar or a biologist or any of that stuff to sit down and have conversations about these things. I think that given the information from some of your first video that you probably know a bit more about the Bible than I do, or your second video rather. But still not a requirement to talk about these things. You want to tell a little bit about your background and stuff, and we'll get into some other stuff here in a few minutes, but just so people know what we're dealing with here.
Sure. I'm Ray. I'm originally from Arkansas and still not sure how I ended up in Western Kentucky, but I'm glad to be here because I do love Ale 8. And for those of you who don't know what Ale 8 is the greatest soft drink. I don't know, Joe, what do you think about Ale 8?
It's all right. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is very much this area kind of thing, People,
it is.
Yeah,
it's the greatest.
Yeah,
but yeah. Anyway, so from Arkansas and very religious upbringing. Parents were very strict Southern Baptist fundamentalists. Grew up listening to John MacArthur. Can't go back and change that. And I was in college. Went to Southern Baptist College. While I was there, my roommate was killed in a car accident, and decided I was going to go into ministry after that. But I was also pursuing a sports medicine career, which is what I do now. And I did go to ministry after got a master's degree, and I went to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Pastored for 10 years while I did sports medicine. And while I was in the ministry, I made a poor choice and had an affair. And I have wrote a book about that, actually. Got approached by a publisher while I helped people who'd fallen in ministry as well. And I started drinking very heavily for the first time while I was a pastor. And lots of religious trauma to be dealt with. I'm sure a lot of people who are here today have dealt with a lot of religious trauma as well. I chose to deal with my religious trauma and also trauma of my mother also dying in a car accident while I was a pastor. Dealt with that through drinking. And then about 2 years ago, I decided to finally get sober. I'd tried a lot of times before, and I'm here today. And about the same time, I started examining my own beliefs and got sober about the same time I became an atheist.
Yeah. The it's funny how a lot of programs use religion to try and bring people to sobriety, but um, people who actually come to sobriety, a lot of them become atheists on that trip, or become atheist and then realize, the world is a bigger place, or the universe is a bigger place, rather, I guess is a better explanation. I've always said, and I commented this on your video earlier, it doesn't matter what path you take to get clean or whatever. It's the right one. Whatever works is the right way to go. And if that is, some kind of religious based program, which, there are some secular versions of AA and stuff now, but even if it's a Celebrate Recovery and all that stuff, I mean, if it works for you, then by all means do that. But for me, and as I've talked about before, I became an atheist while I was in active addiction, but whenever I started discovering and learning more about the universe and things of that sort, and how all this actually works, to me, it was just an eye-opening thing of I wanted to spend more time with that rather than in the depths of my addiction. And it wasn't an instant thing. It never is. It's always a big process. But it's not necessarily that led me to sobriety. It's that whenever I started to get sober, that having that understanding and not trying to put accountability in God, but being able to take it on myself, was very, very, very valuable to me. And that's why I speak a lot about accountability now, because I think that these religious based programs, you hear people say, oh, I got clean by the grace of God, and fine, whatever. But like, God didn't have anything to do with that math problem there. That was you. You did that, and you need to not only be accountable for the bad things you did in your past, but the good things that you do to improve yourself. And what putting that in God does is, when you mess up, it allows you to take that accountability off of yourself. And when you have relapses and things, it allows you to say, oh, well, I'll let God fix that, and God isn't the one that's got to fix that. You are. And so.
Yeah, and you mentioned something interesting too. I mean, that's the one thing of all the things I tried before. Like I can't. There's a lot of people, and I watched your stream a week ago, and there's people who can drink and not even think twice about it. And they can wake up and be sober for a month, and that's not me. And
yeah,
there's people who can handle drugs or beer or liquor and not even think twice about it. I'm not that person. It's just not in me. But what you just said rings true for me. Like all the times I tried before, I white knuckled it, and that wasn't for me. I had to have help, and it wasn't until I reached out for help and had somebody say, "I'm here for you," and when you need help, you reach out to me, and that was the accountability. That was the only time I could do it, and that's not just true for alcohol or whatever. It's true for everything. And you can't do it alone in this world. You gotta have somebody.
Right. And I mean, it's getting clean is never a simple thing. There's a complex set of things, because you got to talk about people who just say, oh, well, you just got to have the will to do it and things like that. And some people can do that. And some can't. And there's physical dependency, and there's medical issues with withdrawals and all of those things. And so it's not just a simple, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and not do this thing that I've been doing every day. You didn't get there overnight. You're not gonna get back the other way overnight. And you may not ever get back to where you were before at all. I mean, there's a lot to deal with it. There's I mean, this goes without saying, I think, but like there's dealing with not necessarily, like, my problem wasn't cravings. It was, I mean, I had physical cravings to where I wanted to go do dope and shit, like, but it wasn't the cravings so much as the missing lifestyle that went with it, and I had fun when I was doing those things, and it's, you get used to routines and lifestyles, and the people you surround yourself, and the places you go where people like you, and all those things. And so it's not just a matter of I'm going to wake up and not do that, because that's also, I'm going to wake up and not talk to any of my old friends. I'm going to wake up and not have the life I had before, And for me, I was on drugs. I was also selling a lot of drugs. So it's not like I could just say, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and not make any more money, like it wasn't a thing like that. So,
yep. And also too, with any kind of addiction, your brain, it's chemical, it's your brain releases serotonin and dopamine, and then you're in a habit, and you have a series of steps you go through, and this is part of your lifestyle. It's part of your routine. And like you said, you have people you see, and it's part of your every day. You go to this place and you see this person, and it's part of your brain's way of dealing and coping with everyday life. And you're not just off a drug, you're getting off a routine and seeing people.
There's a French guy named Gabor Mate who does he has a few different videos, but he does some videos that talks about the actual physical changes that your brain goes through when you're addicted to some kind of chemical, and how some of that can be undone, some of it can't. And but yeah, it's not just a matter of I'm not going to do this thing. I mean, there are actual physical things that occur because of the corner you've painted yourself in, so to speak, I guess. But I get it. I mean, like, I agree with you completely. There's a lot more to it, and you have to be prepared to deal with all those things. And sometimes being prepared to deal with all those things means you're going to need some counseling. You're going to need to talk to somebody. You're going to need to get outside opinions. You're not always able to do that on your own. Barnaby Wild, $5 super chat. Hello, Joe. What do you know? Hey, Ray. Don't know you, but any friend of TKA is a friend of mine.
Barnaby and I were going at it the other night in trivia, pretty good. So we had a good time.
Yeah. Trivia's doing awesome. I love how that's going. I don't get to take part in it a whole lot because that falls at a weird time for me. I have to really do some planning and moving things around to be able to do trivia night. But the times I am in there, and whenever I did it myself there one night, did the trivia night and stuff. I'm glad to see everybody having fun with it and everything. And again, it's just it's a reason to let everybody who wants to come have fun and do trivia not have to do it with this whole argument about God and everything. And I mean, I get that nice. Stuff gets old.
It's nice. Mark just said one of the big problems of quitting anything is asking for help. And it's not even just asking for help. Asking for help is a huge deal. But first, I remember I used to see the little quizzes that would say, do you have an alcohol problem? And I would take the quiz, and it would say things like, do you have more than 3 drinks a night? I would drink a whole fifth some nights. And it would say, do you have three or more drinks a night to calm down? Or do you feel like you needed to sleep? And I would be like, no. I would just live in all kinds of denial that I had a problem. Of course, I don't have a problem. I mean, other people may have a problem, but you have to come to terms with yourself that you may possibly have a problem when you're drinking a whole gallon of Fireball a night. It wasn't that much, but yeah, it was a lot, Yeah.
Well, I think you eventually you have to get to the point to where you can realize that it's not sustainable, that this isn't going to go the way I think it's going to go. You have to at least get there. I mean, for most people, it takes getting to some sort of rock bottom or having some kind of really traumatic experience because of it that kind of shakes them loose from it for a minute to where they can think. But that's the issue, is when you're dependent on these things, your brain tells you that you need these things if you go without them. And so it's not until you can get at least a few days or so away from it to start to think straight again and make decisions about that part of your life that are reasonable. It took me 3 years. So I remember the day like it was yesterday, but I had been on Suboxone for some time and had been doing well, and I hadn't been failing tests or anything. I wasn't using, but I was still just going through the routine of, okay, I take my Suboxone, I go do what they want so I can get more Suboxone. I'm selling part of it to be able to live and whatever. And one day, I swear to you, this is the way it went. I woke up that morning and I sat up in bed, and it was like, what in the hell have I done with my life? And it just all of a sudden clicked of I know that I'm never going back to that. I know that I can beat this thing. And it was that in itself was almost a traumatic experience for me, because it was like I finally had the clear enough thought to realize the bigger picture of everything. And that's what it took, It took 3 years of me not using drugs before I realized that. And before I realized, hey, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm not going back to doing drugs and stuff. Now, it was another 5-6 years of staying completely clean, no alcohol, no pot, no nothing, before I got back to where I was like, okay, because I had, in my younger life, I had been, I like to smoke pot. And some of the stuff coming out about weed and things I was looking at and everything, and I was like, well, I like to smoke weed. And so now I occasionally smoke weed, but I may pick up weed and do it and then not do it forever, like it's not the same thing.
It's not.
I realized that my addiction was specific to a certain group of things. Like, I'm not going to get addicted to meth or cocaine or any of those. I'm not going to use any of those things, but it's opiates and things that I would have the problem with. If I went to a doctor right now and they're like, we're going to write you a prescription for Loratabs, I'd say, the hell you are. Like, I have no desire for that. In fact, whenever I broke my wrist, they wrote me a prescription for IR-10s, which is like 10 milligram Percocet without any of the buffer and stuff in it. The nice thing about IR-10s for someone like me was that you can break them bitches up and put them in a syringe. And so I remember that, and the doctor, I said, no, when they tried to give them to me, I said, no, I'm not sure that I want those. And he said, look, your Suboxone isn't going to cut it here. He's like, you're going to have to take something for pain. And they had taken me off of my Suboxone right before the surgery, and which I was cool with. And I remember after the surgery, I was laying in my bed because I couldn't do anything else hardly. I had broken ribs and road rash on half my body, and my wrist was broken in several pieces. And I remember sitting here looking at that bottle and thinking, those aren't working very well, but I know how to make them work. And I got up immediately and went and flushed them all down the toilet. And I was like, there's no way in hell, like I can't be in that position. And
Nope.
So yeah,
I remember you were saying the day, and I remember having my day, and I talked about it in my video, but I had been angry and irritable, and those are long-term effects of alcohol abuse. Just being like that every day, just being miserable and cranky and angry, and anything will make you mad. And my kids were tired of it. My wife was tired of it. And just the way you treat your family and the way you are at work. And I remember I had ordered, I have them sitting all around my house to remind me. I ordered $300 worth of football kicker cards. Now, I was blackout drunk in my defense, but there's no excuse for being blackout drunk and ordering $300 worth of kicker cards from eBay. And they all came over a span of 3 weeks to my house. And I woke up the next day to all my emails confirming that I had bought $300 worth of football kicker cards. And they're sitting, rest of them are sitting in a little box in my closet over there. And it's a lot of them. I mean, you know how much money $300 for the NFL kicker cards buys? A lot. And I woke up the next day and I thought, I'm just sick of feeling like this. And I'm sick of being angry. And I know my kids are disappointed in me. And I know my wife's disappointed in me. And I was second shift. That's what my job is, second shift. I'm tired of feeling hungover until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just downloaded an app and I got to work. And I haven't looked back since, but it's a completely different life. And it took a long time to get trust back from people. And that's something you cannot get overnight, and you can't demand it from people, and you have to earn it. But it's when you do get trust back, especially from your kids, it is the most rewarding thing to get. Especially from family members, when they see that you put the work in. I didn't even tell them I was trying, because I was afraid if I told them I was trying that it was going to ruin it or jinx it, or that's ridiculous. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I just knew that I'd screw it up.
It's got to be a personal thing anyway. So I mean, like, as long as you were the one that was in it, you know, like that's really all that matters there. A couple things here in the chat. Earl says most drug users have a class they stick to, uppers or downers. It's rare for somebody to be broadly opportunistic. Yeah, that seems to be the case with a lot of people. For me, alcohol was never a thing. Like, I could get drunk for a week and never drink again, or I could, you know, and even now, occasionally I drink a beer with my food or something like that. But for somebody who's had a problem with alcohol, that's something they have no desire to do, you know. And here, this is a really interesting one. I'm on opioids for my back, and I treat it like a deal with the devil. You always pay in the end. It's why I've managed to keep the dose low and avoid addiction. Painful but safer. This is true, and you have a lot of people who aren't able to do that, who got on drugs legally through medical need, and just either the dose was just, you know, kept raised until it got, you know, to the point that they were unable to quit, or they've been on them for long periods of time and unable to quit. Again, that's, you know, different people, different things. For me, my thing is, if I'm in a medical, like when I had heart surgery, I would have loved for them to given me some pain medicine through my IV or whatever, you know, for the pain. But I wouldn't have loved for them to bring me pills all the time while I was sitting there. That would have messed with me. It would have been one of those trigger things that I couldn't. But I mean, handing you drugs, if that's that's a pretty decent trigger.
It is.
You know, I actually asked for them to give me something for pain while I was in there, and they were like, "We'll give you morphine," and I was like, "Listen, I take Suboxone. That's not going to do anything. You have to give me something that has a higher binding rate than the Suboxone that I'm taking. You're a nurse. I shouldn't have to tell you this." And they're like, "Well, we only give fentanyl in this." And I was like, "Well, there's your problem right there." I was like, if you're not willing to address, you know, people who dealt with addiction, and you have millions of people on things like Suboxone now, if you're not willing to treat them, then just say so. Like, and so I went through it, and they gave me Tylenol, and that was the end of it. But most painful thing I've experienced in my life by far. But
well, I'm sure.
I was a drunk and always in social settings where, that's the thing, is you don't, like, I had rituals for whenever I used drugs, you know, and I either went to a place, or I had, drug addicts of my variety that use IV drugs, a lot of times they'll have a box or a something place that they keep all their stuff for it. And whenever they get drugs, it's a thing they do the same every time. They've got their thing they keep the water in. They've got the spoon that they use. They do everything a certain way every time. And it becomes very ritualistic. And,
Yes.
you know, that's the same with a lot of things. You go around the same people and the places, and that's where you're most comfortable being your worst self at.
Yep. And I killed Earl in saying, see, I was a loner drinker. I would come home after working in healthcare all day or pastoring or whatever I was doing. And it was my way to, after everybody all day was complaining to me and I had to hear their problems, and it was my way to shut down and take care of me for that. And deaden. It was, and really just to deaden everything. And you know that once you're sober, the elephant in the room is you have to deal with you. And I had
it
to
all
deal
comes
with
back
myself
at once.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And you suddenly you're left alone with you can't deaden those feelings anymore. And all that pain or trauma and all those bad feelings that you had repressed, all of a sudden you have to deal with them face to face. And that's where the recovery gets really hard.
Well,
you have to talk to people.
The term that I always used with people is that the worst thing or the best thing about drugs is it deadens your emotions. And the worst thing about drugs is that it deadens your emotions. Because when you get off drugs, those emotions come back and you have to deal with all those things eventually. And there's no, you know, you have to eventually, you know, deal with it in whatever way you deal with it, you know, and find some out for it. That's why having a support system and people around you that care about you and care about your sobriety and things is somewhat important. You know, one of the things that used to kill me is even after I was clean, I would go to group and everybody would stand up and say, I've been clean for 2 years and this is the best life ever and everything's great and perfect and wonderful and all this shit. And I was like, I went in group one day and I said, because I usually just sit there like, come on, is this over yet? I went in group one day and they were like, Joe, do you want to say something? Because I'm just sitting there shaking my head. And I'm like, oh. And I said, yeah, actually I do. I said, don't listen to these people. It's all fucking bullshit. I said, anyone that's telling you that getting off drugs is wonderful clearly hasn't gotten off drugs, because it isn't. You know, it's great to be off drugs and not have to wake up and hustle and chase that all the time. That part is great. Don't let me, you know, get it wrong here. But the part of it is where you have to figure out how to make money as a normal member of society, and you have to fix all those awful things that you did. Damn it. Sorry. You know, you have to deal with all those things. It's not wonderful and it's hard, but there is a light at the end of that tunnel. You know, and for me, I had gotten to the point to where I hated my life. I absolutely hated waking up every day and having to go through finding money to find drugs, and half the time the drugs were bullshit and didn't work. And even if they did, all I did afterwards was start going to find money to get more drugs anyway. So it was miserable. And a couple hours of being high was not worth everything else I had to go through for it. And as that played more and more on me, I was like, okay, something's got to change here. Either you know, and it's either going to change because I'm going to change it, or it's going to change because I'm going to end up killing myself doing this. And so yeah, that was the thing for me. But yeah, these people that say, oh, everything's going to be great, and I was just like, I mean, it may be that way for some people. I guess if you're someone who has money and a stable life aside, I can't imagine somebody being on drugs to the point they want to get help and having a stable life, though, because things like functional alcoholic and functional drug user and things of that, those are misnomers, because there's not really such a thing.
No, there's not. And you're right. It is a hustle. I mean, when you're in the middle of it, you can, I think for the most part, when we're not sober, we choose to stay in it because it's comfortable. It's the life we know. And it's like anything else, if you're in something and you're comfortable with it and it's just the way you continue to live life, then you're going to stay in that continual downward spiral because it's just easier to stay in that. But if you choose to break out of it, you can tell when you talk to somebody who's 1 or 2 days out and they're having those problems, there's 1 or 2 to 3 days out, 2 weeks. It's completely different for me in 2 years, but I still have triggers, and it's not wonderful all the time. And there are days when I have moments where I'm like, man, that sure sounds nice to kick back with some Jack Daniels or whatever. And and then I catch myself and I'm like, I don't want to go back to that. But it's never easy. It's it's a constant struggle.
Yeah. And what I mean by not being a functional user is you may be able to hold down a job or something for even a long period of time, but eventually you won't.
Nope.
You may be able to do it, and depending on, I guess, how much resources you have to flush down the toilet, you may be able to make it seem like you're doing okay and stuff for some period of time. But again, sustainability, it's not sustainable. And that's, you have to recognize that. And
someone's going to notice.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Never mind. But anyway, so you also had the added thing that you were a pastor, and not only did you have to come off drugs, but you had to come off religion, which in a lot of ways acts like drugs.
It does.
But yeah, and I think sometimes the way that pastors are trained is almost, they know that. Like, I think they know what they're doing in some cases, but if you believe, I guess it's not really. I don't know. There's some weird stuff with that, but.
Well, you're right. I mean, I was brainstorming some ideas for some videos coming up, and I'm going to talk about that. But they train you, and it's a slow process. And while you're doing it, you don't really think about what is going on and what they're doing to you. And if I was in a small rural church near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And so, when you're doing that, I believed. I mean, I was as fundamentalist as you can get. Well, that's not true. I was not as fundamentalist as you can get. I was not Westboro Baptist, but I was not tolerant. I was of other people. I was closest to John MacArthur as you could get. Let's put it that way. I was not very nice in my beliefs, and I'm not that anymore. Trust me, I've done a complete 180. But when you're in the game, and I remember the first time I really realized what a scam it was, and it was after I graduated seminary, and I was sitting around with a meeting of fellow pastors in the community, and there were a mix of big church pastors and small church pastors, and they were all sitting there just talking about numbers and baptisms and what they were doing and how they were working the numbers and how they were working the baptisms and how they were just bragging to each other about what their outreach schemes were and how much money they were bringing in. And I thought, is this what it's supposed to be? Because I'm not doing a very good job, because maybe we've had 2 baptisms this year and I'm just having a good old time up there. But it was a scam for a lot of these guys. And it still is. And now when I look at it from the outside in, I see that the big church guys, they know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. And they're running the till. You know, they're making
Yeah,
moonshine.
well, it becomes a numbers game at some point, because it's like, how successful are you as a pastor is determined by how many new people you're bringing in the door and how many you're retaining once they get in there. And
That's right.
it's all a numbers game. So if you can draw more people to your church, even if you're not that great of a pastor, statistically, so many of them are going to stay. And you know,
That's why every year at the Southern Baptist Convention, when they elect the president, well, how many baptisms did that guy have? And if numbers are down, like they are every year, they'll retool the numbers so they'll look a little bit better. Even if baptism membership is way down, they'll retool them to make them look better. Well, they're down however many, but they're only down 15% compared to 10 years ago when we had blah, 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 blah. And if they're down, then we need to give more money to the Annie Armstrong and Lottie Moon Foundation. Everybody open your wallets and let's give more money so we can make this thing a game changer, because we're not reaching enough souls for Jesus. So open your wallet. It's scam, man.
Yeah. It's and it takes, I mean, because Kentucky is Southern Baptist everywhere. I mean, pretty much. I mean, you have other things, but there's still, even like the Catholic schools and stuff in Kentucky have a touch of Southern Baptist stuff going on with all the, well, I mean, Catholicism does kind of the same thing anyway, where you're an awful wicked person and you don't deserve this, but you may be able to get it if you listen to me, you know.
We have such a wash of religions in Kentucky. We have Campbellite, Church of Christ. We have Jehovah's Witness. We have Mormon. Someone's going to come knocking on your door that has some. And we also were the site of the Second Great Awakening, of the western part of the Second Great Awakening in Logan County, where Charles Finney was going crazy and knocking on, getting people all riled up. And don't you know that that's still part, that revivalistic fervor is just still part of Southern Baptist life, and people popping up revival tents all throughout the summer, and vacation Bible school every day in June until as far as the eye can see. I mean, I tell people over here in Western Kentucky, and it's probably true in your part of the woods too, you throw a rock in the air, you're going to hit a Dollar General or a church.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's, so like here we don't have, I've never met a Mormon here, but we do have Jehovah's Witnesses have been growing here lately. But
end times fervor.
Yeah. The weird thing in Eastern Kentucky is that, like, I can go down to the Nazarene Church or the First Baptist Church or to the Pentecostal Church, some Pentecostal churches, not all, but they're all saying the same shit. You know, there's not really much difference in the fire and brimstone and all that goes on within Southern Baptist, and or at least that's what Southern Baptist was here. That's all the preacher ever talked about. And if he talked about something else, it would be like, well, you know, so and so in the Bible did this, but if you don't listen to this, you know, you're weeping and gnashing of teeth. That was the line that they always used, and I heard that at multiple churches too. And I mean, I get where they pulled it from, but it was just odd that they chose that line. Yeah.
You hear Vacation Bible School. You'll hear it like when at the end, like they always have a day during Vacation Bible School, and they're like, okay, now we're going to tell the kids the gospel, and they'll flat out tell those kids they'll burn in hell. And I know one of the guys, I think he's currently in the leadership of the North American Mission Board, and his testimony literally was, I was told when I was 6 that there was a lake of fire, and I got saved because I don't know how to swim. So
yeah. There was all these things about, like, if you didn't want to do something or couldn't do something or whatever, is that's the devil.
That's right.
Yeah. If you just trust in God, you'd be able to do those things. Yeah, there was a lot of that. It was a weird thing, but
yeah, the devil did that to you, or Satan made you do that, or Satan tempted you in a certain way. But if it came out positive, then God helped you do that.
Yeah.
So yeah. There's
Yeah.
always
It was because
wordplay in there. Yeah.
The devil knew you were coming to church here and wasn't able to stop you because you believe in God.
But we have to pray a hedge of protection around your heart, Joe, so the devil can't get to you. I know, man. I used to live that life. Now as a pastor.
See, at our vacation Bible school, it was always whenever it came time for all the New Testament teachings and things, because for the kids they like to teach a lot of the fables and things out of the Old Testament, Noah's Ark, and they'll talk about the Jesus thing about building your house on the sand and all that nonsense too. And there's some songs and things with it, but it's usually like Old Testament stuff. They talk about Job a lot. They talk about those type of things. And then whenever it came time for the New Testament stuff, though, what they usually did what they did in a few of them that I went to, because I would during the summer I just go to there's all these different places that have vacation Bible school, and they make sure that they're all different weeks so that they don't interfere with each other. I would just go to each one because it was kind of fun. I'm not going to say that it wasn't fun as a kid, but whenever it came,
it depends on the craft.
Yeah. There was always some kind of act where it was okay, we're going to have you memorize these verses, and we're going to talk about it, and you're going to read these verses, and you're going to memorize this. And it's like why can't we just talk about it? What point is that? But later looking back, it's I see what they were doing now. That's part of the indoctrination thing.
It is. There was always a central Bible story or a central Bible character, and it was almost every other year it was something to do with Daniel, and Daniel wouldn't eat the food, and Daniel got in the lion's den, and Daniel resisted blah 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 and did all this. And then it was a central Bible verse you had to memorize, and craft time was prepared around it. And then you also did an activity based on it, and it was just all indoctrination for these young kids, and based on stories that at some point you had to look at and go, did that really happen? But as a kid, I always tell people, at the moment your parents told you, and spoiler alert, if anybody out there believes in Santa, you have 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. Okay. But at the time when your parents told you that Santa wasn't real and the Easter Bunny wasn't real and the Tooth Fairy wasn't real, they should have just said, hey, and you also need to make your own mind up about religion as well, because that stuff sounds even crazier. But we didn't do that. We just kept telling our kids, hey, this stuff is real. Someone walked on water. And
the funny thing is that they're teaching all this stuff. We talked about the Exodus, about how Moses led the Hebrews out of Egypt and all this stuff, and what the things, and God gave the laws and all this stuff. But it's funny, once they got to Exodus 21, they never mentioned that part, and they never talked about the slavery and the all the other things that are in there. And it's which I understand from the pastor's point of view. It's I ain't fucking touching that. There ain't no way to talk about that, But it's weird because, and I'll tell people, they'll say, well, I'll ask some Christian randomly around here, and they'll say, well, you're an atheist, you need this. And I'm like, well, do you think that, slavery is okay? And they're like, no, that's a sin and that's awful. And I'm like, well, let me talk to you about the Bible for a minute. and at the end, they're like, well, I didn't know that was in there. It's usually the first thing they say. And I'm like, I know you didn't. And that's why we're having this conversation, because you think that pastor standing up on stage is some authority and somebody important that's telling you something that you can't know without him. It's all in that book. Read the book. Like, read every page of that book and pay close attention for things that you find odd. Like when you see something that says, you know, you have to kick your wife out for 7 days when she's on her period. Like, you see that, like, maybe think about that for a minute. And those kind of things, like, later, whenever I went back through the Bible myself, and even then, because it's written so long ago, it's hard to follow some of it. But when I went back through it, it's like, these things don't match the things that they teach in church and things. That pastor wasn't lying to me necessarily. Well, some of them did lie, but that pastor was just telling me the pretty parts. And, you know, as long as I believe in that, which is why I think that they had to simplify to, you know, just believe that Jesus died for you, you know. But just like you said, like you looked at the passages from what was it, Genesis 17, about circumcision, and and you have a video about this on your channel for anybody that wants to check that out. But it's those strange things that it's like, okay, how do I make sense of this, you know?
Yeah, and I, you know, when I don't know if it was because I was sober-headed that I started reading it again, but I'd read the Bible so many times before. But I also remember when I was in seminary and the things they taught us about how to preach. Of course, they teach you how to preach. And I'd grown up listening to John MacArthur. But, you know, it's 3 points, you know, usually. And they tell you, try to get 3 points out of it. Try to get 3 points that are applicable. Try to always make sure you mention the gospel, no matter what passage you're preaching on. And try to make sure that people are able to understand the passage. Well, when you going back and looking at that advice, I realized that a lot of pastors are going to stay away from hard and difficult passages in the Bible. You know, people aren't going to read that stuff on their own. I did, however, to my credit, on a Mother's Day, I did preach a sermon about Solomon splitting the baby in two. So I pat myself on the back for that one. But you will stay away from hard passages. And if anyone pays attention to current Christian preaching, you know, there's hardly even Bible verse even mentioned. You know, Joel Osteen will stand up there and say, "This is my Bible." You know, everybody holds their Bible up and talks about it, but he won't even read anything from his Bible. You know, we're so biblically ignorant, like you're talking about. You know, you challenge someone on their Bible, they haven't read it.
Yeah, that's they, especially for that particular group, they have rather than reciting verses, they'll pick little pieces out, like you gotta sow that seed.
Yeah.
You know,
but see, Christianity is not even about the Bible anymore. It's about how it makes me feel. You know, what has God done for me lately? And I feel good because I know I can talk to God anytime I want to. And it makes me feel safe and comfortable knowing that the maker of the universe is looking out for me. And that's what Christianity is about. Now it's all about the feels, and it's about what God can do for me today and how Jesus made me feel like I had hope and love and blah, blah, blah. So,
yeah. And that's why a prosperity gospel is something that's you know, so intriguing for so many. It preys on people that are less fortunate or that have problems or are dealing with bad things, you know, because it claims to have the answer to everything. And you know, it's unfortunate that you have, especially with some of your older folks getting towards the end of their life, they're looking for answers and things, and they get sucked in by somebody like Kenneth Copeland or the like, and they're like, well, their families are telling them the whole time, you know, stop sending him your money, like this, you need to stop doing this. And they, you know,
your $1 is not going to magically turn into $1,000. And Kenneth Copeland, you're just putting gas in his jet.
Yeah, Kenneth Copeland does not need your money.
No, he really does not need a new set of veneers for the 20th time. No, he does not.
The and that has now, especially with some of the platforms, video platforms and things on the internet, people like Greg Locke and Catherine Crick and Joel Osteen. It's an easier pathway to them getting a lot of people to come to these huge churches where they just rake in the money from everybody.
Yeah. And COVID was a blessing for those ministries. Honestly, they, for two reasons. One, they could get on their right wing high horse and say that people are trying to keep you away from church. But for the second reason, it platformed all those guys, and it got them online, and people got comfortable saying, well, I went to church today. I went to church online, and people are okay saying that. And a lot of people didn't go back to a physical church after COVID. They got stuck online, and they're able to donate all their
jw.org.
That's right, baby. People want to do everything online today, and so that benefits people like Greg Locke and Kenneth Copeland and whoever wants to hold their hand out online.
Yeah, my favorite thing, and I'll put it in one of my videos, was Kenneth Copeland putting oil on the camera, or pretending to put oil on the camera, saying that he was gonna save people from right there in the studio.
He is hours of endless entertainment. I got to give the guy that. You do have to tip the dancing bear, though. So I guess someone's paying him. But he's, golly, that guy that sits on a pile of money like Scrooge McDuck. I swear to God.
Yeah. There's, and it's. I think there's a. I think other people in other areas who are wanting to be successful in certain metrics to do with, taking in money and things like that. I think that, they look at the church and what they're doing, and it's not necessarily that they adopt I used to say they adopt the things the church does, but now I think it's more of they were already doing those kind of things. The church just showed them how to do it better. And so Christian nationalism now is this thing that I don't even know what to say about it, really. It uses religion in a way, and I would say a way that it wasn't meant to be, but they were already doing that. They've adopted some of the tactics and things, and they know, though, that if I've got the backing of the church, or if I've got the backing of this pastor, then I have the backing of his congregation, because he's going to tell them they have to vote for me or they're doing the devil's work, And
that's right.
that's
Well, if you watch the progression of, even when I was back in seminary back in 2000, the guys like Al Mohler, who's the president of the Southern Seminary in Louisville, he would not bow at that time to political pressure, and he would have nothing to do with it. And then you would start seeing a trickling of it. But now, and even at the beginning of Donald Trump, Al Mohler would say, we're not going to vote for a guy who acts like this. And then just 2 weeks later, he reversed his stance. And you slowly started to see the rise of Christian nationalism, even through the Southern Baptist ranks. And now it's just there. I mean, you can't tell the two apart from each other. Whereas you would have Southern Baptists, who I grew up respecting, who would keep themselves separate. Well, not separate from matters of state, because they would always pass some kind of resolution against abortion or gay rights or what have you. But now they are fervently involved, and they want to be on right there in the middle of everything. And they will endorse candidates, left and right out of the pulpit and just not even care.
Yeah. They're not supposed to do that, but whatever. I'm looking at the chat, and I'm seeing Dave over at Captive Desk talking about David and Davy, and he got the name Davy. At my school, my teacher, I had a teacher that called me Joey, And every time she said that, I wouldn't answer her. I would look her right in the eye and act like I didn't hear a word she said. And she would say, "Are you going to answer?" And I would say, "Are you talking to me?" And she'd say, "Yeah." And I'd say, "My name's Joe. It's not Joey. It's not Joseph. It's not anything else. It's Joe. You call me by my name and I'll answer you." Broke her of that real quick. She was a nun, actually, but
not in the public school system.
no, in the public. She was a nun, but she
was
worked
in the public school system, right?
Yeah.
So she couldn't crack your knuckles with the ruler and everything.
Yeah. No, it wasn't a faith-based. But
that's where it went wrong. You couldn't get your knuckles cracked.
Yeah. Well, in my elementary school, I grew up in a very small town in eastern Kentucky. They still busted your ass and stuff for getting a C on a test. Like it was, yeah, they had paddles hanging up in the hallways for teachers to use if they needed to, and they didn't ask your parents or none of that shit. It was. In fact, I had a science teacher in 6th grade that everybody that got a C, you would hear every week. You would hear out in the hallway her lining people up and paddling them for getting a C or worse on her test. And
write a better test, lady.
Yeah. If everybody's getting a C, maybe your fault.
Yeah, could be.
But yeah, these it has to be weird for somebody who was a pastor and taught these things, especially though, to now look at it and understand it better as like, well, not even understand it better, but just like, I believed that was true, but now I know why it's not. And it's got to be parts of it that are difficult to cope with too, I imagine. But
it is. It's hard. It's especially hard when it's two ways it's hard. It's one way it's hard is when I watch the Southern Baptist Convention online every year. There's a YouTube channel I watch. I can't remember the name of it, but they cover it every year. They do a really good job. I can't remember the name of it, but it's watching all those people not think critically about a single thing. And it's just a gigantic business meeting is what it is. And if anybody here who's watching has ever been to a Baptist or any denominational business meeting knows those things are, if you really want to know about a church, show up to their business meeting. And if you want to know what kind of people they're just real people. And, they're like, oh, we're blessed by the Lord. And we're just a group of people who are, God, Christ makes us better and he makes us unified and he makes us more peaceful. No, show up to a Wednesday night business meeting and see how peaceful and unified they are. They'll argue and have a knockdown, drag out fight about money or what color the carpet's going to be. And the other place where it's really weird for me is funerals. When I go to a funeral and I see a pastor get up and use that as a platform for the gospel. And, when there's a person laying there who should be properly eulogized and talk about that person, but you get up there and you use that as a 30-minute speech about the gospel of Jesus. Now, if that person wanted that, that's fine. But instead they get up and they turn it into something it was never meant to be. That just breaks my heart every time. And I never did that. I used to mention it if that's what the person wanted, but the proper place for that kind of thing is in your pulpit, not at a funeral service. But that's Kentucky, man. But that's everywhere in the South. Yeah.
It's religion is very much involved in all things in Kentucky. It's the weird thing seems to be about it though is it's like it'll be involved in all things, and if somebody says, okay, stop doing that, this isn't the place for that, and then they're like, oh well, I was just trying to help, I was just telling people what they, it's always like I wasn't trying to do anything bad here. And it's like, yeah, but you came here with the intention to proselytize and to try and tell people to come on down to the First Baptist Church, stop that shit. This isn't the place or the time for that. And again, it's a numbers game, especially in Kentucky, because all those churches on every block, people go block to block. They'll go over and grab some people from this church and from that church and and then they go to this other church, and they're all fighting and talking shit about each other from the pulpit every week to say, you go to that church over there and you're guaranteeing yourself a ticket to hell.
That's right. That's right. That's how the numbers game's played. And a lot of times church growth is, there's 3 churches in Hopkinsville over here, and all they do is steal members from each other. And it just depends on who the pastor is. And, if they like that guy and he's making things grow and they've got new activities, or they're building a new building, and that's what a lot of pastors think growth is about, that we're building a new gym. We're building a new indoor track. We're building whatever. And they get the numbers,
My church always needed a roof. That motherfucker must have built 20 roofs over the years. But it's weird. And also you have, like, whenever the new pastor comes in, because around here, if you're pastor of a church, that's like a lifetime appointment. Like you're there, and unless you really piss off some people, you're there. And every time a new pastor would come in somewhere, it's like the old ladies in the front row are like, no, I don't like what that guy's preaching. He's not true to the word of God. I'm going down here to this other church. And so you always get a lot of that. But and
it's actually hard. I mean, if you got a pastor who's, and it's easy to assume that pastors aren't in it for the right reason. But a lot of guys are, especially in small churches, and it's a hard job, listening to people complain and having to do funerals and just listening to people's problems and going to visit the elderly and seeing people in church, in the hospital. And, even though that guy, and I like to tell people, even if you don't know that guy or that woman, that minister is grounded in bullshit, and they haven't made that realization yet, they're still a human being.
Yeah. And
the same goes for any Christian you talk to. They're still a human being who hasn't come around to the truth yet. And they may be going through a hard time, and they may be struggling with some real things in their life. And you might be there at the right moment to talk to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's something I have to make clear, especially to people locally here, is that I'm an atheist who has a YouTube channel, and I talk about the harm and lies and things spread by religion. But at the same time, I don't have any issue with believers. Like, I get people believe this, and I understand why they believed it. I believed it for 20 some years. My issue is with the religion itself and the doctrine within it, and what some people do with the name. In the name of religion, they have people do awful things. And so it's not that I could care less what some individual believes. It's the things they do with that belief afterwards.
Yes, that's right.
That's a thing I picked up from Stephanie Helms a long time ago. But it's which I don't think she came up with, but just that she said, and I thought, yeah, that's right. It's not. That's how I can explain it to these people. Is like it's. I don't care that you believe or whatever. That's great. I mean, if you want to talk about the individual things you believe and why I don't believe those things, we can. But I don't care that you believe that stuff. That's great. If it helps you, do it. Whatever. I don't tell people not to go to church or whatever. If that's, in fact, if you do believe it, that's probably the best place for you. Like, I mean,
yeah, that's right. But don't bring those beliefs into my sphere and tell me I have to believe that. And don't change my local laws and ordinances in a bigoted fashion.
Well, I know that, I remember going to school and them saying, well, we're not really supposed to talk about this.
Yeah.
And then following that with some Christian nonsense. And I know that that's probably not as bad now as it was when I was a kid, but my kids are going to school and stuff now, and so that's one of the things of why I felt more of an urge. One of the many reasons of why I felt more of an urge to talk about some of these things and stuff. And I've never discussed religion with my young kids at all. Like I've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. Never talked to them about it at all. Period. Never mentioned it. Never brought it up. They don't know. My son knows that he said, "What's that book?" And I said, "It's a Bible." And he said, "You're going on the internet to talk about your Bible?" My 4-year-old. Well, he's 5 now, but and I was like, yeah, kinda. That's what I'm doing. But I don't think you have to. The difference is that, and that's the difference whenever Christians say, well, atheism is a religion and you just believe evolution and science is your religion and all this other stuff. That's the difference. It's because I don't ask that anybody believe anything, including my own children. Religion isn't the same. All I say is that, maybe we should think about this problem here and what about this and this issue and that issue, and let's talk about all the different things that can happen and all that without ever, a famous quote by scientists is whenever they went to use, when asked why they didn't consider religion an answer to a question, they said, there is no need for that hypothesis.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I apply is it's like, there's no need to even bring that up. Once they get older and say, hey, this crazy kid at my school was telling everybody to love Jesus. Why? Then we'll talk about what all that's about. But until it becomes a thing, I'm not even gonna introduce it. There's certain things that they have to decide for themselves and stuff. And I can't prove that no God exists. I can prove that certain things in the Bible are absolutely not true, which is, I think, a huge problem for the Bible. But that's about where it stops.
Yeah, I hear you. Somewhere in the midst of all of my life, I did manage to do one thing right, but I don't know if it would have turned out the same way if the sequence of events in my life hadn't happened. But both my daughters are in their 20s, and they're both strong feminists, and they're very outspoken, very very protective of marginalized groups. And I asked my daughter, I was down there visiting her this week in Florida, and I said, where did you get your voice from? Where did you learn that? She was like, from you. She said, you always taught us to stand up for ourselves, and you always taught us that women matter. And I was like, good. I'm glad I did that. But somehow in the midst of all my confusion and not knowing, and she's an atheist and on her own terms. And my other one she actually went to Campbellsville. She graduated. She's hanging on to the last shreds of a God belief, but that's on her. That's on her own time. She's figuring all that stuff out on her own.
Yeah. To me, it's more of a like, eventually questions are going to come up about this because of where we live and where we're at in the country and all that. So rather than poison the well now or go and say, these kids are going to tell you these things, I'll just let it come to me, and eventually we'll have that discussion and whatever. And one of my kids knows that my YouTube channel, my older son knows that the YouTube channel is the Kentucky Atheist. He understands what an atheist is somewhat, from what he said. So he didn't have any questions though. So
he ain't worried about that right now.
Yeah. And it's that's one of those things. It's like, while I don't think that that's the right conversation to have with my kids right now, the church is the total polar opposite of that. No, we're going to start telling them, because I look at my 5-year-old, when I was 5, they were telling me I was going to hell. and I'm sorry, but they start telling my kid that, and I'm gonna kick somebody's ass.
That's right.
Like that's gonna be a problem. I don't
Yep.
think that's as acceptable now as it was, in the early '80s, but we'll see what
Well,
happens.
you were talking about earlier about the day, I remember clearly the day I stopped drinking, but I also clearly remember the day I stopped believing. And I'd done all that work. And I remember coming across that passage in Genesis 17, and I wrote it down and I thought about it all night. And I woke up the next day and I said out loud to myself, I said, who have I been praying to?
Yeah.
And I thought, and I said it out loud. I said, there's no God. And I said it again. And I said, he's just not there. And I had the weirdest feeling. And you know what the best part of it was? Because I was raised in a situation in church where God is always there. He knows how to read your mind. He knows how to read your thoughts. He knows what you're doing every second of every day. And so every shameful thing you do, that is just compounded on you by 100%. So if you're thinking a bad thought, you're a bad person. And that's how I was raised. And I still have, religious trauma, like shame issues. And when I thought that thought at that moment, I suddenly had free a burden of like about a million pounds lifted off my back, that no one was listening to me but me. And that was the most freeing moment I think I've ever had in my entire life. It was the bonds of, and I don't know if you want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It's like, so I don't know. Do you like Harry Potter at all?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. I don't. I'm okay. Well, I shouldn't say I
read
don't.
The books were okay that I read.
Well, see, I started reading the books as part of a challenge this year. So in Harry Potter, there's a little character. What's his name? The little house elf, Dobby. So Dobby, I'll go on about Dobby for a minute. So Dobby was a slave to one of the other people, and then Harry Potter sets him free. And what's the first thing that this little slave, this little house elf does as soon as he gets free? He puts himself back into slavery. And I just went on a little rant about this to my daughters who read the whole Harry Potter series. At that moment, when I got free of God and I'm free of all that belief, I did not want to do anything but be free for the rest of my life. That's why I was so angry at Dobby. I'm like, why would you want to go back to some kind of system where you have an overseer or an overlord? Why do you want to live like that? Why do you want to have some celestial heavenly father looking over your shoulder 24/7? It's ridiculous. And when you think about it like that, you don't want that. You don't need that. You don't need someone reading your thoughts and reading your brain. And yet here's little Dobby, who's a slave, and he just goes right back to having another. And that's what it's like, jumping from one denomination to another, or one religion to another. Oh, I think I'll try this religion. And that just wasn't for me, man. I got free and I kept running. Yeah,
that's a good metaphor. I'd never thought about it that way with him, that he was like, and even though Harry was like, no, I'm not your master. He's like, okay, master. It's very much that.
Give me some more. Give me some more of that sweet house elf slavery.
Yeah. So are you familiar with the Clergy Project? Have you heard of that?
Yes, I am. I was in there for a little while. They have a little special secret setup room for pastors, for former pastors. And they also have a lot of guys on that message board who are currently serving as pastors, who are atheists.
Yeah. I think that's what's secret.
Yeah. Well, think about it. I mean, and it's a tough place to be in. If you're a pastor and that's the only job you know how to do. I mean, it would be like if the only thing you knew how to do was mow lawns, and that's the only thing you could do, and you had some tragic accident and you suddenly were quadriplegic, you couldn't go mow lawns anymore. And that was, you would have to find something else to do. Yeah. And if these guys are the only thing they know how to do as a pastor, and then along their journey, they become cynical, or something has happened to them, or they've read the Bible enough to know that this is bullshit, and they suddenly have to go, I don't believe this anymore. And so what do you do? And it's a tough place for them. And I know a lot of people would say, well, you quit. Well, what are you going to do? You know, all you know how to do is take care of people and stand up in a pulpit and read some verses. And it's tough, man. It's a quandary.
Now, are you familiar with Ed Raby, the rabid atheist?
Yes, I've heard of him.
Yeah. He was, well, just maybe watch some of his stuff and things, because he dealt with a lot of that same thing you're talking about there, and being a pastor that no longer believed that it was true, and how he dealt with those things and stuff. He talks a lot about that stuff, and I can't. I can't. I mean, I can somewhat imagine, I guess, how that would go, but it's got to be a tough thing to deal with, thinking about, you know, all the ins and outs of that, and especially for the pastors who no longer believe, and that's again what they've been doing forever, and that's what they know, and that's how they put food on the table, and all those things. I mean, what do? You wake up one day and go to church, say, I don't believe none of this bullshit, and not have a job or any of the things that you have in your life anymore. It's got to be a complicated thing for a pastor to find their way through that. Which,
well, not even that, but it's even the public shaming that comes with, imagine stepping up in front of your church and one day just saying, I'm stepping down. And even if you don't tell them right then, they're going to find out that you step down because you don't believe anymore. And two feelings. One is the public outfall of you not believing, but also knowing you faked it and knowing that you let all those people down, and the amount of shame that you're going to carry around. And I know there's nothing to be done about that, and that's no excuse, but still all those complicated feelings that go in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems to me like that you, as we do, we make mistakes and things, but you seem pretty good at finding your way out of them. I mean, you got both religion and alcohol out of the way, and so I hope you continue to do well and stuff. As far as like the secular forms of recovery and things go, I think that needs to be more of a thing personally. I think that there are a few out there that, you know, specifically label themselves as secular recovery programs, but I mean, honestly, we have a couple boards that control these type of things, and I think that they have to look at the numbers and admit that involving religion in these things is a bad thing, not a good thing, and that what we see is the same program in two places, only one of them uses religion and one of them doesn't, has completely opposite set of numbers. And if for no other reason than just in the name of saving lives and stuff, I've actually been trying to get together the stuff and things to do a full-length documentary about religious-based care. And it's at this point, it's still more of a dream to do it type thing, like I want to eventually, but it's going to take quite a bit of planning and all that when I get to the point that I'm even able to pull off such a thing. So, but that's always been something from the very beginning. In fact, one of my first posts after starting this channel was about that, that I want to actually go and I was going to do a couple videos on it and stuff, and I was like, no, let's do this better than that. I want to actually have interviews with some professionals and talk to people within that system to get to the bottom of it, because I know for a fact here in where I live that those type of programs are absolutely responsible for several deaths. And according to the American Society of Addiction Medicine, it doesn't get much better when you leave here either. So that's something I've been wanting to work on for a while. And
well, I know the one I use is, it doesn't brand itself. It's definitely not religious, but it doesn't brand itself as secular. It's science based,
yeah.
And that's what drew me to it.
Yeah.
And it dealt with showing you how your addiction is scientifically based and how it affects your brain, and it walks you through day 1, day 2, day 3, and this is how you're going to feel. And I know that if I had witnessed Alcoholics Anonymous, never was in it, but I had to definitely firsthand witness Celebrate Recovery. And I knew that was not going to be an option for me to be able to sit around a bunch of people praising Jesus, and if you've been to Celebrate Recovery, have you ever been to a Celebrate Recovery meeting?
No, we don't have those here. It's all AA.
Oh, thank goodness. Well, it's a big worship time, and then someone gives a testimony, and then you break down, and it's a bunch of people who were trying to get sober, but you can tell they have no interest whatsoever in the religious time. They're there to get a card checked off for a judge.
So let me tell you what the local AA group has done here, though. There's a big old church down in Ashland. I think it's probably been there longer than any of the others. And I guess the deal they made with these preachers down there is that they can use their rooms and stuff within that church. Real nice place. But that's how it works there, is you go in and you get to listen to them for 10 minutes or so at the beginning, go on, and then they go into the group stuff and all that. And so, yeah, I can relate to why that's not cool.
Yeah, it's not cool at all. It's like the Salvation Army. You have to listen to a sermon before you get a meal.
Oh, they do that. That's how all the homeless places work here. That's another thing. Ashland has a really bad homeless problem going on, and there's people on every corner asking for money. The park, the library, all these places, homeless people everywhere. We have an organization that helps with that kind of stuff, but they're completely overwhelmed and everything. So some of these groups went and asked churches, hey, do you think you can help out, like give a place for these people to sleep? You've got this building here you're not using, these things. Nope, never. And it's like,
of course,
it's like we have all these churches, and the thing that they're supposed to, that they're supposed to care about these people and stuff, they don't care. But when it comes time, we're cooking all these things. All the homeless people can come down here and eat. Yeah, it's dependent on you listening to a sermon first. And every Saturday in the park, they call it Church Without Walls. It's they give away biscuits and gravy and stuff, but you have to be down there at a certain cutoff time, which is just in time to hear the sermon, And yeah, it's a dirty tactic, but
and they don't want you showing up to their church on Sunday either. They don't.
Right.
They don't want you.
Right.
Yeah.
They'd rather do it then on Saturday rather than have you come in on Sunday. And I mean, from one point of view, it's like, okay, I know, I've been homeless. I know that people are going down there and like, I don't give a shit what these people say. I just want the food. And fine, they're feeding people. But it's from the other side of it, it's like, okay, they're exploiting the whole thing here, and they're that's kind of a shitty look. But yeah, there was one church down here that was that said, yeah, we've got space and homeless people can come stay here and this and that. And he got online and publicly shamed all these other churches, saying, hey, we're supposed to care about these people and stuff. And why is my church the only one that's doing anything to help these people?
Good for him.
Yeah, he's no longer a pastor. Yeah. They shut the whole church down, told him he wasn't allowed to have people there.
Well, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, why love people and feed them and clothe them and give them shelter. You know, church isn't for people like that.
Yeah. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. I'm watching the chat.
Yeah, I got my eye on it too.
Yeah, we get things every now and then happen. But anyway, I'm going to kind of wrap this up. I've got here in about an hour, I'll be over on Wavelength. They're going to do they're going to watch Canada nostalgia video for Canada Day, and so I don't know how well that's going to go, but we're going to try. And I mean, I get it, like it's a patriotic thing for them, and it's somewhat equivalent to Independence Day here. So going to check it out and everything and see what that's about. It won't hurt me to get a little more culture outside of Eastern Kentucky, right. I'm sure. And
nothing says Canada Day better than inviting a Kentuckian to come watch a Canadian video. So.
Yeah, well, I figured the video didn't have enough cuss words, so they wanted me to come out. But yeah, I do want to thank you for reaching out to me, and I really appreciate the kind words you said to me in the emails and stuff. It took me a minute to get to watching your videos and stuff, because it's just like I have to think about this thing until the next one comes up, and then the next one, and but yeah, and just like I told you and everybody else, I mean, you can email me anytime, the Kentucky Atheist at Gmail, and I'll answer you. I'm always down to talk to people about whatever, and I'm glad that you messaged me, and I'm glad that you're making videos, because I think that your experience is just as valuable as anyone else's, and in the area of your experience as actually being a pastor who has found a better way. I think that's even more valuable than a lot of people. So keep doing what you're doing, and you seem to be pretty good at it and pretty comfortable in front of the camera. So I think things will go well for you.
You mean a lot to me, and this community means a lot to me. And I remember coming across your first video. It's been months, and it spoke to me. And this community is supportive, and they're good people. And you keep doing what you're doing, because it means a lot to a lot of people. And you've connected a lot of people, I think, who normally wouldn't have met normally. And so I know this means a lot to a lot of people. So thank you, and thanks Asho, and thanks for everybody.
Yeah, there's been one of the cool things about doing this is the name The Kentucky Atheist was just kind of like a joke, really. Like I was like, I'm the Kentucky Atheist, the only one, like when I first came up with it, that's how it was. And then immediately I started meeting other people who are like, hey, I'm from Kentucky and I'm an atheist. And I mean, I've met quite a few people now who are atheists in Kentucky. And it's really awesome that this has been a way for them to come and talk about things and stuff. And it's whether we understand it or know it or not, having this perspective from such a religious area, such a red state, such a, the Bible Belt, having this perspective here means a lot to people who aren't here. And it means a lot to others that are here. There's atheists that wouldn't have spoke out about many things had they not discovered that there's a lot of other atheists in Kentucky too. So even if I don't reach a whole hell of a lot of people outside of that and everything, which I think we've done pretty good so far. I mean, we've made it to 1,000. The channel continually grows. We get more viewers all the time. I mean, so I'm not like saying that I'm disappointed with any of that, because I'm not. Everything's going great. But the fact that other people who live here and understand that you're surrounded by religious people and churches and things, and that there are others here to talk to and stuff. You don't know it, but you're right down the road from Robin, who is a huge part of this channel. And Robin's right down there by Murray too. So but it's been a way to connect people and stuff, and I'm really thankful for that, because it's awesome getting to see atheists from a not so obvious place speak up and talk about things. So I'm grateful to hear another one doing it. It makes me happy. So.
Okay.
Anyway, let's see here. What do we got? Before no one saw the gator. You ain't going nowhere, Joe. Freaked out. Hey, PC. Yeah, we got Titan Uranus out there. Titan, I'll holler at you in Discord here in a little bit. All right. I just wanted to make sure there weren't any questions or anything I needed to get out of the way before we wrapped it up here. What's coming up? Do you got any new? You working on any videos right now and stuff? I know you said you were brainstorming some ideas. Anything you want to put out?
I'm planning on hopefully maybe getting a video or two out. Maybe my plan is to start the week off with a video about being sober, and then tying that the same theme into being free of religion. So hopefully starting that tomorrow. But I've already scripted a couple things out. So yeah, just keep an eye out. I'm doing it hopefully more of it's for therapeutic reasons than anything else, but it's helped me work through a lot.
Well, that's as good a reason as any. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say there were selfish reasons for me doing what I do. Like it helps me to my social life, especially because I mean, it wasn't the first couple of years of being an atheist. It was later on to where eventually I got to the point to where it's like, I live among all these young earth creationists, because here it's a lot of that. And it's like, I don't necessarily trust the judgment of these people always. And so looking for, people to talk to that were like-minded, and you weren't going to be, immediately judged and treated like crap. And they're not saying, yeah, you're good. And then they turn around and go tell everybody, that dude over there, he's a Satan worshiper, yes, I said bye 30 minutes ago, Azo, shut up. It's been helpful. So being able to talk to people and stuff, we all need some kind of peer group, and about the drop bears. What are we going to say about the drop bears? They're very scary. I hope I never run into one of those in the wild, which I don't think I got to worry about here. But there's Robin, put her email in there. You can email Robin. She's like I said, she's down close to you. She's real close to you. Ray said bye 45 minutes ago. Yeah. All right. So next week we'll have a bunch of atheists here in Ashland, Kentucky. You're welcome to come make that trip if you want to, Ray, but I understand it's not an easy one. Take some planning.
My sister's coming, and if she doesn't come visit, I would love to, but I prefer my sister.
Yeah, right.
I won't say what I prefer, because she might.
I prefer your sister too.
Maybe I'll bring her with me. She's an ex Church of Christ. She's an ex Church of Christ. She'd be fun to mess with.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll be doing the show live from Ashland, Kentucky next week, and we're gonna have some fun, and there'll be some clips and stuff of the different things we do. So everybody look out for that. That's all I really got for you tonight. Catch us on Wavelength in here in a little bit. Thank you, Ray, for your time. Everybody have a great night. See you later. Bye.